I was convinced, mostly telling myself, but those closest to me, I'm going to retire at the age of 30. That's it. I'm out. Here I am in my late 50s now, and I've completely flipped. And I actually don't want to retire.
This is the We Built This Business podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Osullivan. This is the podcast for UK business owners to share their journey, their knowledge, their sacrifices, and their successes. Today, I'm pleased to have Rod Bailey on the We Built This Business podcast talking about ExecutiveSurf. Rod, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, Dan.
Thanks for coming on today, Rod. So could you start by just giving our listeners a brief overview of what Executive Search is all about?
You made a mistake there, Dan, but ExecutiveSurf is the name of the company, right? And so it's in the name, actually. It's in the name because ExecutiveSurf is an executive search firm. So that's kind of the posh word for headhunting. Founded in 2004. And that was at a time when we noticed that there were plenty of new technologies coming along, and we were hoping to bring the world of executive search kicking and screaming into the world of new technology. Okay, so as an example, nobody was online. Job sites were just appearing in those days. And we integrated responses to job ads into our platform. But from a headhunting perspective, as we were headhunting candidates, for example, we could register them through the back end of our website as well. So our database was kind of combined behind the front end. So that's what we are. We're a headhunting firm. We are a virtual firm, and I could possibly come back to that a little bit later. But we're a global executive search firm, but we are virtual. And what that really means is that we speak a bunch of different languages, but a bunch of different people from different countries. So it's not just a question of the language; it's also the country they come from. So different nationalities, and working all over the world.
Fantastic. I'm glad you picked up on my executive search mistake there, because I deliberately put that one in for you. Could you just tell us a little bit more about the size of the business right now? How many employees you've got, the kind of revenue?
So we're around 20 full-time employees and just under 2 million sterling. I should say that as a result of that fact that we are global and we do divide ourselves into, if you like, country nationalities, we do have plenty more like researchers working on searches, but only on a part-time basis. So from the 20 full-time, we probably double that with fractional researchers from various locations. So Turkey, for example, or Finland will have an individual who's dedicated to us, but only works part.
I see. And whereabouts are you located?
London's fashionable Kilburn. We're we moved fairly recently actually, but we're in a serviced office in West London, close to Paddington, and that kind of suits most of the people who are based here in the UK who do come to the office, and it also suits me because I live out in Wiltshire, coming to Paddington.
Fantastic. I wanted to go back now, Rod. Just before you started ExecutiveSurf, what were you doing and how did you get into starting the business?
Right, Dan, I've been around for a while. So my story starts, and stop me if I'm sort of going into too much detail. My story starts in the 90s, really, and I far too young for my own good. I set up co-founded, I should say, a search and selection company. So that's search, the headhunting, and selection, sort of the mid-level company. I think that was in 1990. And that's tough because even then, and it's pretty much the same today, but even then, there were at least 10,000 registered recruitment companies within the M25, right? So there you are. You said I set it up with my that company. Set it up with my boss at the time, great. It's all very exciting, and you hit the phones pretty rapidly you realize you have to show some sort of a specialization. And what we did, instead of saying we specialize in one particular sector, I cottoned on to the fact that actually there was a lot of fear about those pesky Europeans and European integration. And nothing really changes, right? Because that was going 30 years ago. And so to actually speak to the guy in the center at the HQ of a multinational based in, let's say, the southeast of England, and say, "Hi, my name is Rod Bailey and I'm a headhunter. Please don't put the phone down. I'm not interested in what you've got here at home. I can help you in what you've got overseas. I know you're responsible for 10 offices around Europe. I can help you over there. You don't need me here. The reason why you don't need me here is because you speak the language you grew up in. You've got mates who are recruiters. You just know how it works over here. Over there, on the other hand, we could perhaps help." And that really worked very well. So two of us started that company back in 1990, and we grew from just the two of us to, well, by the end of the decade, we were coming up to 500 people in 24 different countries around the world. Okay, so and there's a sort of, the reason why I went into that, Dan, is because there was an understanding, there was a realization, and that was that you don't have to go really sophisticated in terms of your value prop. It was pretty basic actually, but the reality was that sort of that worked. They didn't put the phone. Most of them did actually, but some of them did, and they might have given us a search in, say, Poland. Can you help us out in Poland? Of course we can. Start to panic, and then actually hopefully do a good job. And then perhaps 3 months later, having done a great job, they might pick up the phone again and say, "Well, what about Belgium? The same thing in Belgium." "Yes, we can." "Spain?" "Yeah." And then 3, 4, 5 years later, it was normally the case that they would come back to us and say, "You said you couldn't do over here. Well, can you?" And that was the point we'd say, "Well, of course we can." That was just an entry gambit. And that worked really well. So after 2 years, I went to live in Italy. I speak Italian. I speak it better than I did then, but went to live in Italy, did the same thing there. So started speaking to Italian multinationals, telling them I didn't want their business in Italy. I was interested in the business international. After a year, I went to live in Spain. I speak Spanish. Went to do the same thing there, speaking to the Spanish multinationals. Then a couple of years in France. I speak French. Did the same thing there. And all the while, colleagues were, newly arrived colleagues were opening up different offices around the world. So you can imagine how that happened. We got to sort of 1999, and by the time we opened our office in Qingdao, we've already got business in China, because it's being referred in from colleagues around the world. Okay, so it's quite a simple model, worked really well. That's the sort of foundation, it's the premise for sort of where I come from, and it's sort of in my DNA. I really, really am passionate about this thing around cultural differences, and the fact that when you speak a few words of you order your beer in Greek in the taverna, the bar staff will sort of open up, a little bit culturally to you. And if you sort of speak the language much better, then, you get to understand the culture better. You speak it fluently and you get to really understand the language, but you'll never actually be Greek, right? Because you didn't grow up there. So so that's the whole premise. That's where it comes from. ExecutiveSurf, as I said, set up in 2004. And it was with the idea to do the same thing, but much more sort of tech facilitated, right?
Could I
in terms of...
Could I just ask a couple of questions on that? Because I'm really interested in, so the first company you called and you said, would like to basically recruit for you in Poland. Did you already have someone set up in Poland ready to go? Or what happened next?
Cards on the table. No, we did not. I mean, look, I had some experience of recruitment, and my partner at the time, he had some experience of international recruitment. But no, it was really just a question of desperately trying to understand, because no, I didn't speak Polish, how things work in Poland, and getting up to speed incredibly quickly. So, a little bit of the BS that you have to have.
Were you
hood strap, should we say?
you sold before you delivered, didn't you? That's the thing. You got the sale, and then you worked out how to deliver it, and then you did a good job. And that's amazing. That's really, really awesome.
Scary, but yeah, that was how it worked.
How are you fluent in so many languages, may I ask? Is it something from school? Did you go traveling? When you were a kid, how did you get to learn so many different languages? Because I only know English, and I struggle.
I have no idea. Really, genuinely, no idea. Just from growing up in provincial South Wales. Yeah, I always dreamt of sort of going abroad, doing stuff, romantic. I dreamt of being French, but no particular reason. But then I did discover I had a certain aptitude for languages, and the aptitude is not it's not a technical or structural one. It's just basically I'm good at copying accents. I was good at accents as a kid, and so I can copy, precisely how you say a word in Turkish. The Turk will say, "Really? That's amazing." And I suppose that's really, really helped me along the way. Sometimes it appears rude. If I'm speaking to an American, I'll start speaking in their accent within seconds. And it's not intentional. It's just that I can hear myself talking, and I copy.
So how many languages would you class yourself as fluent or could have a good conversation in?
Oh, obviously besides the English, definitely Italian. So I got to the stage, and I don't think I'm at that stage still, but I got to the stage where I could have a conversation in Italian with an Italian. The Italian would kind of go, "Where are you from, Rod?" Because they'd kind of think I was Italian, but I made some weird like really basic grammatical errors. So it was like I was a badly educated Italian, but Italian. So it's come off of that peak, but no, totally fluent in Italian. Pretty fluent in French. I can have a decent conversation in Spanish, and I can get by in Portuguese. So it's all the Latin languages.
Amazing. Love that. So we'll go back to 2004 now. So when you set up, so you were originally with a company with your old boss. What made you leave there, and what made you set up ExecutiveSurf?
Well, there was a bit of a reckoning there. It was a day of reckoning, actually, and it was sometime, I think, around 96, 97, where me and my partner, we had a conversation around the event, the exit event, because we've been talking about the exit event pretty much since the beginning, and so we were 6 or 7 years in, and managed to set up a conversation with kind of one of the big players in the world at the time. So we'd gotten to about sort of in executive search and headhunting terms around number 20 in the world, in terms of sort of absolute size, number of employees, revenues, etc. So and bear in mind the other 19 on the list were way older than us. I mean, they've been around since the 1960s and 70s. Right? We'd only been founded in 1990. So I managed to broker a conversation, a meeting face to face with the guy who actually he didn't set up Monster. Remember Monster, the job site? He didn't set them up because they were something else. They weren't a recruitment company when they were originally founded. But he bought them when they were some sort of a media site, turned them into a job site. And then he started out on a shopping spree. And it was around about 1995 that he started his shopping spree, and he was looking to verticalize his recruitment offering. So Monster was a job site, therefore it was considered to be for low-level jobs, but it was global. It was pretty much the biggest. I think it was the biggest job site in the world, and he was looking to add on to that portfolio mid-level selection companies and senior-level headhunting companies as well, equally globally. And we came in pretty much at the outset, at the beginning of that spree, and we would have ticked a lot of boxes for him in the sense that we were a search and selection company, and we were already pretty global with a pretty extensive footprint. And we had the conversation. He was a Texan. He had a hat, and we ate burgers.
So they're a good
very
match.
posh. It was in the Four Seasons Park Lake, and we ate burgers. And he came pretty close to actually making us an offer. I mean, he made us a verbal offer. He was offering us 1 times our revenues we knew we just bought a search firm in the States for 1.6, I think. So we thought we could probably take him to around twice revenues. So we were on for a bit of a payout. But remarkably, the day after that meeting, my partner, who I should be clear about this, he was the senior of the two. He was 10 years my senior. He was my previous boss. Didn't want to call him back. Did not pursue that conversation. And so I just thought, okay, here's a bit of a lesson. If you're going to be a minority shareholder in a privately held business, then those shares are not worth squat unless there is a real intention to exit. And so I kind of got the impression that perhaps that intention was not there. It might well have been, but that's what it felt like. So that would have happened something like in 96, 97, and the ensuing couple of years we continued to grow. But I guess my heart started to have doubts. So we separated in 99. I got a fraction of what was potentially proposed at that fateful burger meeting. But I got something out of it, and armed with that, a couple of years later, I set up ExecutiveSurf.
Amazing. I mean, what a conversation that must have been in that. So you say it was in Park Lane as well?
Yeah. As they say, there was a restaurant on something like the 5th floor of the Four Seasons, I think.
So this guy, just delving back into a little bit, where is this guy now? Is he multi-million mogul? What's he doing right now? Is he still acquiring?
Honestly, don't know. Because it was, and I really don't think this was connected with my exit, but with my departure. Do we not call it an exit? With my departure. But a couple of years later, the business pretty much failed. But that was coinciding with 9/11, and the recruitment world just completely stopped for maybe 3-6 months. There was nothing happening in the world, and we were pretty highly geared at the time. So the company couldn't sustain that. So no, I don't actually know what he's doing now. I think he's still active, but not in recruitment, I don't think.
I just had visions of you saying that once you exited, your, business partner then sold. That's what I was envisaging happening.
Oh, yeah. No. And I suppose there is a little bit of a lesson there. Another lesson, which was, and I suppose I already knew this innately back in 1990, is that not to identify too much with the company, with my own company. So I didn't really want my name on that nameplate. I didn't really want to be, the company. And I've never wanted to be that sort of, too closely associated with the company. And perhaps, that could be a criticism you could level at him, which was that it was a little bit, it was too closely associated with the company.
Yeah. So it was too personal for him to let go.
Yeah. And then, the problem with that is that you have this massively inflated view of what the value is. It's like selling a boat, It's like, well, the boat is worth a lot to you because it's got so much sentimental value, but it's not worth that to the market. Whatever the market will pay, that's what it's worth.
So ExecutiveSurf is born. Is it born in Milan? Is that correct?
Right. So it's yes, it is, and it's not my idea. It's founded by So in the 2 years between the end of my previous company and the beginning of my time at ExecutiveSurf, I got out of the business, the recruitment business, should we say, completely, and I became a job as an HR director with a VC. And I got out of the UK, went back to live in Italy. I was a new dad at the time, and I was working for a VC, generalist HR, sort of, but interestingly, sort of evaluating potential targets for investment on the basis of their people, right? So it was tech. There was a lot of tech, but I was evaluating the people. So of course, what you do sort of in checking out a potential new investment, you'd look at the information memorandum, all of those pages, but you kind of look at, well, is it scalable? Are there barriers to entry? And then you go to the back page and look at the bios of the founders. And I was there to sort of evaluate the founders and check, if we did actually decide to invest in those companies, well, where were the gaps in the structure in order to help them to, to fulfill their potential. Okay. That was sort of fun, but I'm not really an employee. So after a relatively short period there, I got out. But whilst I was there, gentlemen came to pitch to me, because I was obviously the client at a recruitment company, working for a company, or at least the founder of a company called ExecutiveSurf. And he said, look, what we're doing here is that, we've stripped everything out. We're based in a basement in Milan. We're doing all of the research. We're making all of those phone calls like we always ever did in headhunting, but we're combining that with a bunch of tech. And we've also built a platform. So it's all sort of, custom built. They'd spent, hundreds of thousands on this platform, and, they had good investment. And he said, the output of that, because who cares? But the output of that for you is you being responsible for hiring people from around the world, or at least that they are based, somewhere around Europe. I'm going to bring them into Milan. So you're looking for, say, an investment manager, can come from anywhere in Europe, must have around 8 years of experience in one of the big strategy firms. Probably the target salary would be around sort of 80,000 euros, something like that. This guy came in and he said, listen, we can do that search for you, because what we'll do is we'll use the job sites, but we'll combine that with headhunting. And what you'll get as an output is you get 10 shortlisted candidates that tick all of the boxes, all of the must-haves that you're looking for. And if you sort of say on the basis of that initial 10, no, you don't like the look of 2, we'll replace them. We'll bring it back up to 10. And by the way, we'll also guarantee that you will get 2 hires out of this long list of candidates. And for that, we're going to charge you the princely sum of, I think it's 5,000 euros. Right? So let me tell you, sort of, I got a couple of quotes from some of the big search firms, the big executive search firms, and they had minimum fees of, I think, 30,000 euros per search. So we're talking 60,000 minimum fee. So you either go really targeted, or at least you either went really targeted.
So what enabled you to do it at 5,000 when they were offering it at 30?
Literally, because it was because they were just they were doing it from their basement. They were they were combining all of the tech, bringing in, sucking in all of the data, and they were sort of just stripping out all of the fluff, as it were, right? And the alternative was, okay, if you're going to look over around Europe, then you have to advertise on, say, Monster in 10 different countries, and that'll cost you about the same, like 5,000 euros something. But you'll get probably about 30,000 responses, and so you've got to sift through all of those responses. So it was like one extreme or the other. I just thought that's a brilliant opportunity there. And we bought the service, and we hired 2 people, and then we started the conversations around investing in the company. 9/11 actually came, and there's a bit of a theme here developing, but that VC pretty much failed at that point. ExecutiveSurf did so too, because pretty much half of their clients were tech firms. They were startups, around the dot-com boom, and they lost half of their clients overnight. So I acquired the company ExecutiveSurf personally from the receiver. Concluded that operation in around 2003.
Wow. Just wanted to delve in a little bit to the impact of 9/11 on the recruitment industry before we go into how you grew ExecutiveSurf. So obviously the impact was a pretty sharp recession essentially. But what was the core backlash in recruitment that was caused by it?
Look, I think it was just panic in the world. It was more so than, say, the war in Ukraine. It was a moment. It was an incident, and it just threw the world into a spin. And I think, just in general terms, recruitment tends to be, that canary in the coal mine. And so, that's one of the first things to suffer is like sort of, okay, if you had a project to hire somebody, then you're just going to stall it. You won't probably cancel it, but you'll stall it. You won't make that because you are literally going into the unknown. You don't know, where the macroeconomy is going. And so everybody just held off on their decisions. And I think they all came back sooner or later, within 3 months, 6 months, maybe some after 12 months. But no decisions were taken in the months after.
Yeah. I guess it was just a busy wait and see moment when the world was so unstable that anything could have happened. So all business plans went out the window and everything stopped.
Yeah.
So when you took over ExecutiveSurf, what was left?
The platform. Oh, well, I suppose what I acquired was the platform. So the tech, the brand, which I liked, and the data, because there was, an awful lot of candidate data, probably a couple of 100,000 CVs, predominantly Italian-based CVs, but there was quite a bit of data there as well. No personnel. So that was it.
So you've just acquired. What happens next?
A little bit of a slow burn, if I'm honest, to start with. I wasn't prepared to fully jump in, so I had a couple of other projects on the go, but it was now mine. And I relocated personally, but also the business back to the UK. So, when we fully launched in 2004, that was from the UK. So interestingly enough, ExecutiveSurf was very well known and still is actually as a brand. It's not a household name, but it's well known in Italy, and it still isn't in the UK. So we sort of brought it back to the UK, and what I did there was I just combined that great tech with the data, lovely brand, with my previous experience and approach. So with the idea of, okay, let's do this global expansion thing, but let's do it sort of much more stealthily, very lean as a structure. And that's what we did. So from 2004 through to about 2012, we proceeded to hire the staff, hire the international staff, and then open offices, actually. So we got to around 10, 11 offices through those, noughties, up to around 2012. I think we had around 12 offices in 2012.
And were they in different countries?
Yes, sorry. Shanghai, Sydney, Warsaw, Milan, obviously UK, all of them in different countries.
And I'm assuming they were like full-time employees. How many people did you have by 2012?
Yeah, it was probably more like 70 or 80, and most of them employees with local managers who were shareholders in those local countries.
So what then proceeded to happen? Because you had 12 offices. I know now that you're a virtual company. What was the decision that you made that changed things?
I don't think it was particularly a light bulb moment. It sort of came incrementally, but through sort of 2008, 2009, 2010, we were doing pretty well, but it was hard work, and it is really hard work in the service industry. Setting up something which kind of from, it's global, so you have people sort of working in really geographically disparate places. You're on the phone to your colleague in Australia at 1 a.m. It's a long way away. So the kind of the stickiness to the company, the loyalty to the company, it's tough because you don't have a brand, a global brand. So people aren't sort of sticking to the brand. There have to be other reasons. So it was really, really hard going, and I don't think we were profitable at all in those years. And then there was this kind of arrival of, I saw LinkedIn when it first, set up. I think I'm one of the earliest members on LinkedIn. And it pretty much won the battle by 2012. I mean, it was pretty much the repository for your CV, whoever you were and wherever you were in the world, and pretty much at whatever level. So So I can now see you on my screen, whoever you are. If it's not LinkedIn, it's the idea of Zing or Facebook or Google, whatever, but I'll find you on my screen. And at the same time, if you allow me, then we can enter into a conversation. We can have that conversation on video. And guess what? It's free. And it was like, so that was a moment I thought, Jesus. I mean, so hang on a minute. Let's go through this again. I can find you if you're in Caracas, and we can talk free. I don't really need an office over there. I mean, look, it's better if I do have an office over there. It's better if I'm kind of breathing the local air and sort of understanding the local gossip. But, that margin is getting smaller and smaller. So it's time. Let's have a go. So we decided to close all of our offices.
Incredible. And that was 2012?
Yeah.
Did everyone just then work from home or remotely, essentially?
Well, so, one by one. So, sorry, it wasn't that sort of overnight sort of just turning out the lights, but one by one, those offices closed. And it really took through till about 2018, 2019, before we got to just the one where we could fully say we are actually virtual. Well, virtual, got the office in London.
Wow. So the way the business operated, did you downsize or did you expand as you went through that transition?
Downsized. So, we had 15 people in Frankfurt. And so, we closed that business over a few months. We closed that business. Did the same in each of those offices individually. But there was, and I should say this actually, there was a condition of the downside, and that was, with respect to the model, or kind of nod to that thing, my passion, that we would never sort of go down the route of doing everything in English. We would always keep those international researchers, or keep that international aspect. So basically, if we're going to headhunt in Germany, we're going to have a German. So maybe the German who was based in Frankfurt was no longer working with us, but we hired a German in the UK. So that was a kind of condition, and that's what we've maintained as we've sort of progressed through the following years.
So I wanted to talk about some of the challenges you've had along the way. One of them being an imposter syndrome when you're growing a business. How have you overcome imposter syndrome, or is it still happening?
Still there, mate. I'm not sure if that'll ever go. But I mean, it was particularly severe when I was, in those early days of that sort of roller coaster of, well, it wasn't so much roller coaster, we were just growing back in the 90s, early 90s. So find myself kind of sitting in front of, I had like 100 people, indirectly, but reporting it to me. I sort of parachute into sort of Sao Paulo, and there'd be like 20 people in the office kind of listening to what I had to say, and it was like, really? Because I was only about 30 years old at the time, and it just felt, I'm gonna get rumbled here. I really am gonna get. Someone's gonna find out, and then as soon as the cat is out of the bag, then the whole thing is gonna crumble. Okay, I've sort of dealt with that, but and it's obviously just a bit of experience as well, because I used to sort of look up to the executives that I was interviewing, the part of a recruitment assignment, and just be sort of in awe of those. But obviously, as you get a few years under your belt, you sort of start to look at them kind of on a level, and hopefully you never get to the stage where you're sort of looking down on them. But it's like, come on, we're all humans here. So I don't think there's so much of it sort of residually hanging around. But it's but I don't think I'll fully get rid of it.
I think every business owner that I speak to is in the same boat as well. They're fighting the imposter syndrome, and no matter what level they've reached in someone else's eyes, they're still pushing that boundary of, I shouldn't really be here. I'm out of my depth. This podcast is sponsored by Team Building Experiences. If you're planning a team building event, away day, or corporate event, then check out team-building-experiences.co.uk and state podcast 15 in the comments to receive 15% off your proposal. I wanted to talk about your managing of details. So I imagine from going from a business that has offices in each country to virtual, the level of detail and process and procedures amongst all of those companies for a company to then go virtual must have been quite an undertaking. How did you implement that, and were you involved?
Yeah, I was definitely involved. There's a kind of dichotomy here in the sense that I am not a detailed person, and yet, what am I fanatical about? I would say I'm really fanatical about, if you like, the look, the sort of the output, the end product. So especially if you can imagine, we get a recruitment project for to recruit key account managers in 12 different European countries. It's essential, right? We might be speaking individually, so single colleagues will be speaking individually with local hiring managers, but it's essential that the level of service and the output, the way that it looks, is identical, completely uniform, especially to the person in the center who's actually overseeing the thing from the client side. So, detail person, I'm not so much the detail person, but actually that I'm completely fanatical about. So I'm still in there checking out, do we put the euro sign before the actual salary, or do we put it afterwards? I'm at that level of detail still checking, because I just don't think I can afford to let that one go. How did we do it? It was just, it was iterative. It was over several years. And it was, it's just absolutely fundamental. If you've got colleagues who are also based remotely, and you've got clients, some of whom you've never met face to face, you can't just rely on kind of understanding each other. You have to be highly, highly engineered as a company, and so kind of manage this thing through a series of a real structure that manages. It's not just a question of writing down the sort of the job spec, but it's actually understanding or clarifying the understanding of each individual word in that job description. What does team spirit mean, to you? And sort of understanding exactly what it is, because of course, you client talking to me and sort of assuming that I understand that. Let's make sure that we do, because frankly, then I'll be talking to my project manager who's going to be overseeing that search. And he or she needs to understand me, and they're going to be speaking to the researcher in each of the different countries, and they all need to understand that, right? So there's no room for kind of misunderstanding.
Okay, because I'm just thinking about it from a logistical point of view when it comes to documentation, because you've got multiple people working in different languages in different countries. You must almost need to produce different procedures in different languages for everything.
We do use English as the standard for our output normally, actually. So the report will be written in English, and so in terms of our process or our internal training, it's all delivered in English. So yeah, it's that's a really interesting point, Dan, because I've got to, because I do and I like to respect cultural differences, but there has to come a point where it's like, I know we do things differently in Hungary. I know you do that, but there are certain things that we'll have to do identically. That's a word. So I have to draw the line. There is a line somewhere between I respect your cultural difference. Now I'm going to say we're a multinational, so you can't, and that's enough.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's also a cost thing as well, isn't it? Because you could end up spending pretty much all of your money proceduralizing things and never make any money. If you take it to too fine a detail, essentially.
Yeah.
Could you tell me about impact recruitment? Because I don't understand what it is.
Yeah, it's new there. It's completely new, and it's great that we sort of had the opportunity to sort of look at the background, the context, where I come from, because that all feeds into the narrative. So if I sort of take it a little bit further, and another moment, there are going to be more, but a major moment in our development was actually, it was a specific moment. It was like 2019, when quite a junior colleague, she'd only been with us for 2 or 3 months, said to me, why don't you celebrate when we make a placement? example. So we're in an open plan office, and a young consultant saying to me that he's noticed that I'm not celebrating. And that really hit me. I mean, it struck me. It was like, what's going on here? Am I bored? Am I been doing this too long? Is it showing? Because I mean, as soon as that starts to show, then the thing falls down. But I took that into lockdown like months later, the first lockdown, and it hit me there because I had a lot of time to think. But it hit me there. It was like, no. You really are passionate about what you do. You still love the buzz of actually making that, matching candidate with client. But your problem is that you actually feel like worrying. It's like a worry trigger when you make that placement. And let me explain, because the way that we bill for our services, that we'll charge a retainer fee up front, charge a shortlist fee, presentation of the shortlist, and then we'll charge the placement from the candidate signature. So basically 3 invoices, and they've all been sent at the point of signature of the contract on the candidate. But nothing really has been proven. I mean, okay, we found the candidate, great, but the candidate hasn't. So you've got a guarantee, okay, if the candidates work out within 6 months, then we'll attempt to find a replacement. But regardless of the guarantee, what really gets me excited, the high five moment for me, is the chance meeting with the candidate. Doesn't happen so much virtually, but the chance meeting with the candidate who, like 2 or 3 years later, says, "Look, forget about you changed my life. That was such a brilliant thing that happened to me. Thank you so much." That's my celebration. That's my high five. It's like a slow motion high five. It's like a high five in the dark as well, because who am I doing it? I haven't got any colleagues to do that with, right? And the same with the client, right? The client who says to me, look, I know we're talking about this search that you're doing with us in Sweden, but the guy that you found for us in Italy 3 years ago, my God, I mean, surpassed all expectations, got promoted out of that job, now runs a team, brought in this new product, whatever. It was such a great hire. And I think that is my why. That is why I do it. So what is impact recruitment? Well, an element of it is we decided to change the pricing model. So instead of a retainer fee, which is normally somewhere between a quarter and a third of the total shortlist fee, the same again, and then the rest on completion. Why don't we go for 1/8 upfront, 1/8 of the fee on signature. So the success fee, if you like, on signature is only 1/8, and then the remaining 6/8, we will link each of those 6/8 to the first 6 quarters that the candidate stays within the company. 18 months there. Right? So we will be monitoring the performance of that candidate over the first 18 months. We're super interested in how they get on, because our fee depends on it. And by the way, so does the commission of the researcher who's been working on that project, right? Now, that has a really profound impact on kind of our way of looking at it, because we don't have a champagne moment. We don't have a, hey, everyone down the pub, ring a bell, honk a horn. Yeah, it's great, but we're not all going to get our commission at the end of the month there. We're going to get our commission over the next 18 months. So let's just keep working on this one, and let's help both parties through those 18 months to make sure that this thing works out. Impact recruitment a couple of years further in, because that's been massively successful. That's been a big take up on that. Was just last year, actually. Started to think, well, I've been doing this for too long. I'm fed up with working with clients that I don't really like, I don't really respect, or candidates that kind of ghost me and all that sort of thing. Let's just only work with the people, the good guys, only with the good guys. Let's make it that we will transition to only working with and fire clients. We will fire clients purely on the basis of the fact they're just not good guys. So that can mean, what does that mean? It's very subjective, and I grant you that's very subjective, but it's like, yeah, okay, so it could be to do with the product that they're sort of that they're making, but it's sort of the way they'll behave, right? And it's also the way they behave towards the employees that they take on, but also the way they treat us, right? They start treating us just like candidate floggers, I'm not interested, right? So that's what we started to do. We started to fire the bad guys, only work with the good guys. And then if we sort of bind all this together with a kind of an ESG agenda, right? Okay, let's start interviewing candidates on the basis of their values, on the basis of their purpose. Let's start properly matching candidates with clients on those two things, values and purpose. And you know what? We've got a billing system that marries in really nicely with that. So we can check on, you join a company, 1 year in, we can ask our candidate, our placement, those values that are written sort of behind the reception desk and on the website, are they true to those values? We can actually audit our clients on the basis of, what they say. So that's impact recruitment. It's from both sides. It's like only working with the good guys, the force for good people.
I love that. It does. I mean, it all works. It feeds into one ecosystem, the longevity, the fact that because everyone can tell you whatever you want to hear in a 30-minute, 20-minute, 15-minute call. But over 18 months, they're going to get found out. What's been the impact on the clients that you now work with? Are they more loyal?
Night and day. Yeah, completely loyal. So, an example of a recent sort of a relatively new client, Italian multinational. We came in with those guys, and this was March of last year, so 15 months ago, as one of 10 recruitment providers globally. We are now the number one provider for them, and they only have 2 providers in the world. So we've just basically streamlined the thing. They are massively more loyal. There's another, no, I'm not going to make the claim, but there's another hope that I have, and this is anecdotal, but I believe candidates stay longer with my clients if I have selected them on that basis, the values and the purpose. I believe they stay longer, and I believe, we call it talent as a service, bit of a brand, but billing on this basis over those 18 months, I believe we recruit in a different way, because no longer are we recruiting for, the candidate who's brilliant at interviewing and, we reckon can get the job because they're great at the interview. We're recruiting for the candidate who think is going to really work out over the long term.
So your purpose, how does all this obviously fit with your purpose as well? Do you communicate that to your clients?
Yeah, I do. There's an inherent problem down in the recruitment sector. It's probably shared with a bunch of other sectors, but this is the one that I know, and that is way back to 1990 when I was sort of making that call to say, "Hey, I'm a recruiter. Don't put the phone down." I mean, it's worse now. You can't actually get on the phone, but back in those days, and it's still the case. Because there are 10,000 of us within sort of Greater London. There are many thousands of us. We've all understood that we have to make some sort of a claim, a USP. We're all claiming something, right? So we're all the best, the most specialized, the cheapest, the most beautiful. We're all the best. You say, well, hang on a minute, somebody's lying here, right? Somebody's lying, because we can't all be that thing. And I think also there's a real kind of skepticism, and it's kind of in tandem with the whole sort of internet thing, that there's nobody believes us anymore. So if I'm coming at this completely cold, I mean, the starting point, the departure point for a recruiter is you are a liar. I mean, you are a charlatan, you're a liar, and you've got to overcome that, right, somehow. So it's working out really well, but actually to get to the point where we actually have the conversation, it's incredibly tough, because we're all the same, we're all liars.
So do you have clients that you can put forward as, shining lights of, they will speak to a new client that you're potentially looking for and say, you do actually live your values, and you have been what you said you were going to be? Yeah, we definitely do. It's even in the contract. We actually ask them, but we'll draw attention to the clause that says, listen, we will be asking you at the end of this
to allow us to give your number to potential clients who want to, just basically speak to a selection of, a random selection of our clients, just to ask the questions they want to ask. Is that okay? And everybody says yes, and then forget about it. But yeah, and we do have a big list of those clients.
That's fantastic, and that must be a great thing to hear as well. That I've, as a new client, here's a list of people you can call. You can call any of them; it doesn't matter. You give them a call, and each one of them is a raving fan.
Look, maybe they're not, Dan, but if they're not, if they give you the real warts and all version, I'm cool with that. It would be good to know. But I'm actually equally cool with that. And I suppose that's an approach of mine as well. And I kind of teach that to my colleagues here, is that we've even got a thing called the elephant in the room. So basically, on our report, we'll tell our clients what's wrong with our candidate. What's the elephant in the room? We all know it. We can see it, right? You're going to find out. So let me talk to you about why I still presented this candidate, despite the fact that there is this elephant in the room. And I believe in sort of just complete transparency there. Besides anything else, sort of psychologically, it's not a bad technique.
I love that. I wanted to talk about the end game. So we started the conversation and you were talking about, with your first business, you had that end conversation. Retirement, ending the business, selling the business, whatever ends up happening. How has it changed for you over time?
Yeah, massively. Trying to work out the maths here, but basically, when I was in my mid-20s or late 20s, let's say, and that business was £600 growing, I was convinced, mostly telling myself, but, those closest to me, I'm going to retire at the age of 30. That's it. I'm out and I'll do something else, but it won't be, that business. It didn't happen because the business continued to grow and it was fun whilst it was growing. So, it got to my mid-30s. Mid-late 30s, I suppose. And I said, it's going to be 40. And no, that didn't happen either. But for one reason or another, it didn't happen either. Sort of into my 40s. And it was like, well, actually, you know what? It's kind of okay. Let's not set a date for the retirement. Okay, maybe for the financial advisors, but let's not set a precise date. Here I am in my late 50s now. And I've completely flipped. And I actually don't want to retire. I really genuinely don't. I'm kind of thinking, well, I love this. I really love it. Well, why would I want to? Maybe I'd want to be sort of have more control over sort of the extent of my, but why would I retire? It's so stimulating. I'm working with people that I love to work with. Why would I retire? So ask me 10 years time, then we'll find out. But yeah, I'll know my attitude. And I suppose also that comes as a result of my attitude towards exit. I just think that's overblown. It's too much of an aspiration. And I know I'm sort of going counter to, most of conventional wisdom these days, but I'm not sure, to be honest, whether pointing everything towards the exit is a particularly healthy thing to do. Also because, what are you going to do once you've, okay, maybe just do some brilliant, more stimulating stuff, but bigger, I don't know. But this kind of mess of the exit, not particularly, I'm not so convinced about.
I love the change over time because I'm approaching 40 this year and I've always had the philosophy that I won't retire. And I don't know why, but I think it's more around the choice part that I would like to, maybe when I'm able to, I can choose to, or when I'm ready to. But at the moment, I can't foresee that happening, and that may be just me.
Well, look, I think I think people, and even sort of Gen Z millennials, they're much more alive to this. Do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. That's I genuinely believe that. And I did spend too long, not doing what I loved, and that was why I was probably obsessing about getting out. But I love it. It's like that's not working.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with that. What advice, Rod, would you give to someone who's looking to set up a business in 2024?
What would I say? It would probably be to do with that, sort of aligning with a purpose. Get your purpose, get your passion really clear. before you even start. And I think if you're clear about your passion, you see, I always thought that creativity, you have to have some element of creativity in what you did in order to be happy with your job. I think I discovered at some point that actually, despite the fact that recruitment is pretty boring potentially, but you could be really creative in the recruitment industry. So I would say, listen, what are you good at? What's your passion? Why were you put here on this earth? And see if you can align, what you're doing as a new business owner. If you can make money out of that, then this thing will grow and you will attract. And I would say that's pretty much it. There's no good time to start a business. It's a tricky market right now. Okay. You do those two things, you just put those two together. And I think that's a pretty good place to start.
I love that. Rod, it's been a really fantastic journey. I know I've enjoyed it immensely. I've learned a lot about recruitment as well. And I loved your model because we have never experienced a model like that when we've recruited. And it definitely makes complete sense because it's all about the longevity. And if you can build that around your purpose as well, why would you ever want to retire? So
there you go.
Rod, those who listen today, how can they find out more about yourself and your business?
Spent a lot of time, probably too much time on LinkedIn. So Rod Bailey, ExecutiveSurf. Please reach out through LinkedIn. That's probably the best place. Check out the website. You'll see all of those concepts on there, but LinkedIn would be the best.
Lovely. Well, thanks for coming on today, Rod.
By the way, anyway, genuinely, I'm sort of up, give advice to candidates sort of setting out or just looking to change. I'm happy to speak to anybody. I've got a bit of experience and international as well, so happy to share that. Pay it back.
Lovely. Well, we'll put the notes in the show notes as well. So if you've got how they can reach out, we'll put those in there so that anyone that wants to contact you directly can do so. But lovely having you on today, Rod.
Thank you, Dan. Great to see you. Great to meet you.
You too. Lovely. Well, that was another episode of We Built This Business podcast, and we'll be back next Tuesday.